Hi guys, welcome back. We have another episode of Hips. These come around so quickly and I get so excited because we always talk about the best things. So for those of you that are watching, big thank you for following another episode. If you caught the last episode, we were talking about abuse within the arts, and it was such a juicy topic that we had to come back and do more. So yeah, there's always so much to discuss around this. I just want to introduce the guests first and foremost. So I'll just start with myself. Obviously, I'm sure you guys know me by now. My name's Jenna Van Dell. I kind of have a background in music and media. And I'm one of the hosts of the HIPS podcast. So HIPS stands for things that are hidden in plain sight. So with this podcast, everything that we do is kind of looking at things around domestic abuse, exploitation, racism. We're going to cover everything. So really, really excited. I'm so chuffed. I love all these guys individually. So to have them all in the same room is just awesome. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they are so brilliant. Louise has been with us before. So welcome back, Louise. It's so lovely to have you back. Can you just introduce yourself? What do you do in the world of arts?
Hi, yeah, my name's Louise Levell, and perhaps against my better judgment, I became a stand-up comedian in 2016, mainly gigging in the West Midlands, gigs in London, and I'm a regular feature on BBC WM.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, Louise is awesome, and she's also got a background in teaching and languages. Yeah. multi-talented, and very knowledgeable about this subject as well. So
yeah.
We've had many conversations, so really looking forward to this episode. And then we have the lovely Ola, my girl, my bona fide sister-in.
Hey.
My mad sister from another mister.
My name's Ola Brown. I'm a community artist, and I work with many different groups within the community, and from elders to young children to families that have come from overseas and everything. I also dabble in many different art forms, and yeah, that's about it really.
Just wondering where you're going with that, Ola. Then I dabble in many different art forms, and you also make amazing jewelry as well. So are those the ones that you've made today?
I wish.
Oh, okay. You're like, no, I got them from Primark. Oh, bless. No, you do make amazing earrings, and I've seen people wearing them. They are very, very nice. So what's your Facebook page, Ola, for your jewelry?
Green Parakeet.
And go and check it out, peoples, if you want some authentic art from a local artist. And then I am so chuffed. We have our first male guest panelist on. Thomas, welcome. Woo!
Hi. So I'm Thomas Oflaherty. Can you hear me okay? And I'm a dance teacher, facilitator, and basically I've been involved in dance since the early 80s, and I'm still going strong. Well, still going anyway. So yeah, so it's a privilege to take part in this, and if I can give any value to this podcast, I'm here to help. So yeah.
Oh, Thomas, I'm sure you will. We were literally on the phone the other day for an hour. I only phoned Thomas to bit more, and it was we were just vibing with the conversation. There was so much to discuss, but honestly, thank you so much for coming on, because I feel the male voice is really important in this conversation, and just to have anybody in fact that wants to feature on this podcast. We really want to hear from everybody, whether you're a professional, just somebody in the community, or just even if you have something to say about these issues. I think all voices are important in the conversation, lived experience or non-lived experience. It's all really, really important. So, and also, can I just give a shout out to Naomi? Oh, we miss you today, Naomi. Naomi's our co-host. She's also the director of PODS, which is Protecting Our Daughters and Sons. So she can't be with us today. I'm not going to take any offense because it's also my birthday, so we're celebrating in style. But no, Naomi's working really hard. So if you catch up on this later, Naomi, shout outs to you and all the positive work that you're doing. So without further ado, Oh, what great, well, it's not even great timing, but what timing for this whole like situation. So yesterday there was breaking news that came out about Noel Clarke. For those of you that don't know, the BAFTA suspended his outstanding contribution award and actors membership. Allegedly, there's been claims around misconduct. There's been all sorts of allegations made, things around inappropriate behavior, sexually explicit photos and naked auditions. He allegedly denies them all, but Louise, didn't you say that there's been a release like within the last sort of hour or so?
Yeah, I just heard on it was BBC Six Music on the news that he's actually now said that he apologises for what he's done and he's going to seek help.
Right.
Quite a turnabout there.
And it's funny because when we were sort of planning this podcast, like all the kind of, you know, he was kind of denying everything at the time, saying, no, like these women are just out to get me. And there was all the excuses, the lawyers and everything. It's really, really interesting, isn't it? I mean, in terms of like the lawyers, and because I mean, some of the lawyers said things like, they really sort of downplayed the victims' accounts, and sort of, it's almost like, I know it's like innocent until proved guilty, but what about like the victims' kind of voices in this? Because did you guys all watch the Finding Neverland program with Michael Jackson and the alleged kind of abuse claims that he had? And the conversation was crazy because it was so sort of black and white. You know, people either believed them or they didn't, but those that didn't, there was almost like zero compassion for them, like, no, they're lying. And it's like, I mean, what do you guys think about this whole thing about production companies, lawyers? I mean, they cover it up until, you know, there's more evidence, but do you feel like they're a big part of the problem? Everyone's just got a face. I'm like,
Can you
go on, Thomas? Come on. Oh.
No, was you going to say something? I'll let you.
No, you carry
first.
on. You carry
sure?
on. Yeah.
I was going to say, he kind of suggested in that Guardian piece that certain behaviours he was aware of them, and I think it's one of those, oh, I'm a man and this is how I act, and if I have done any wrong, I apologise. I think that kind of alluded to certain things that he may have done. So I wasn't too surprised of that. More is going to come out now. I'm not too surprised, but at the time I was totally shocked. I thought, oh, not another one. You know, when's it going to stop? So yeah, I was surprised, but not too surprised, because I know the film industry, you know, the casting couch, these things happen. You know, there is an awareness that things happen, and I'm sure you're going to go into the agency of why it happens and why people look to these idols and think, you know, you can trust them, when in reality there's no kind of a safety measure for them. You know, there's no system where they can go to say, actually, I think I'm being exploited or abused. Who do you go to in that situation? But I'll shut up now and let someone else say something.
It's you're totally 100% on the mark. And I mean, those of you that might have watched the last episode, we did touch on that. And I mean, my background, it's very geeky, but I do a lot of like infrastructure work. I do project management, and it's very much building policies and infrastructures and around businesses. So that's the day job. But you know, from doing that, I realized like how important it is to provide a strong foundation for things to grow. And it's a really, really interesting one where with the arts, because it's so unorthodox in the way that we do our work, it's not like being in an office. So, I mean, if somebody slapped your ass in an office, you'd be like straight to HR. If that happens in a venue, you kind of question like, oh, did that really happen? Was that supposed to happen? And I suppose for, you know, touching on what you just said, Thomas, if you're young and impressionable, like a lot of these young actresses were, you know, trying to make it in the industry, and you do sort of look for mentorship and, you know, people that have more experience than you, and you just kind of trust what they say and what they do and be led by their guidance. So I feel like they have a responsibility, like all of them do. I feel like everybody does. If you see it, like, say something. And we can't always expect the victims to understand that something's happened to them. And if they do come out, like, further on down the line, like, that's not a bad thing. Like, it's very courageous to speak up about abuse. So
Just
yeah.
just to add two little things. I thought I need to know a bit more about this Noel Clark situation. So I went on his Twitter, and he's got the tagline, "I am not a role model," and a sheep next to it. And I thought, okay, I think you know, he's awaiting the onslaught, really. And there was also another kind of Twitter feed which was live, where people were talking about it, and I've got to say, the majority of the people were basically defending him and attacking the accusers, saying, "Oh yeah, but you know, they only wanted this job," and so they were kind of pushing the blame onto the victim, as opposed to, you know, the accuser. So I thought that's very interesting. Already, people are starting to take sides.
And they did that with the Michael Jackson thing as well, didn't they? Like, these were young, I mean, obviously they were men now, but they were doing that. These were young boys that were saying they were abused. And straight away, I mean, if the point that I was originally making around innocent until proved guilty, like, really the victims need that same opportunity. Like, it should be, we don't know until it's been proven. But it feels like there's a culture of, like, let's slaughter those that are speaking out about it. And I just find it's a real weird paradox, isn't it? Where on one hand, we've got all these, like, big campaigns like Me Too and all of this stuff, but then on the other hand, mindset wise, we haven't really grown to understand the complexities around what it actually means to be a victim or a perpetrator. So yeah, maybe it's just more education that's needed. But I do feel like production companies, lawyers, they are professionals, they're experienced, and I just find that their silence kind of, like, just adds to this culture of complicity and silencing the victims almost. So I think that they need to be responsible. I mean, the other thing that happened, which I thought was quite interesting, I haven't been watching this show, but he stars in a program that's been aired on ITV all this week.
Viewpoints.
Yeah. Have you been watching it?
I haven't, but I've read a couple of reviews. It's gone. They pulled it.
Yeah, and I mean, so I was speaking to one of my team members earlier, and we were having this conversation, and so I mean, this would have been the final, right? Because it was, like, in parts. So I'm guessing that it's Friday. It would have been the final episode tonight. And one of my colleagues said that it's a shame for the other people that were involved, because they've also put the work in, the makeup artists, the production people, like, everybody, the editors. It's their piece of work too. So do you feel like it's right that people, once they're outed, should the whole thing be pulled?
I can shed a bit of light on that. It's available to stream, so it's still available on the ITV hub.
Right. Okay. Cool.
So if people, you know, feel comfortable that they want to go and watch it, or if they've been watching it and they're invested, they can go and watch it. So I thought I was a reasonable halfway measure, I thought.
Yeah. Do you think that it was the right call for them to pull it then?
I think they had to be seen to be doing something, didn't they? I think to have him there, primetime TV, that wasn't appropriate. And I think this is a fair way of doing it, that it is available. And like you said, everybody else's hard work can still be seen if you feel okay with watching it.
Well, have you managed to catch up with it as well, Ola? Have you been following this story?
No. Well, do you mean with Viewpoint, or just the whole Noel Clark?
Oh, just the whole Noel Clark thing. What's your kind of views on it all?
It was just very interesting and quite predictable how people responded to the news. I just thought, I can see it coming. I can literally write it ahead of time. You know, it was like, why didn't the victims come forward sooner? Why are there 20 of them? Do they want to bring him down? Even questioning the degrees of abuse. So well, he only looked one of them up and down. He only showed one of them a naked picture. He only did this, he only did that. And I thought to myself, at what point is it not acceptable? So I mean, I know that these women would have probably spoken to somebody in the pub about it, maybe to another colleague about it. So the conversation that they have, this is a long time coming. There'd have been little conversations taking place and people would have gone, nah, I need more evidence, give me more. Then it would get to another stage where they'd probably share it among a large group. Nah, I need more evidence, give me more. Then it goes to the papers. Nah, it's not valid because it's now being reported through the papers. And somebody even said that the papers, they're not the kind of judge and jury and blah. So how can we take their account on board? And I get that, but I think journalists can make quite good sleuths. Is that the right term? They're quite good detectives and they have ways of pulling things out quite early on. So it's not just a case of these women have just decided we're going to talk to each other like like a group of witches and come together at 20 strong and bring this man down, you know, because it's a huge sacrifice. Why would they do that to themselves? So for me, I was like seeing all these conversations taking place and I was just like, how is this going to pan out now? You know, and here we are.
Yeah, that's really deep. That is. It's like, what did you say? At what point is it abuse? And I think that's a really essential part of the conversation.
At what point is it accepted as abuse? At what stage? Because you can guarantee these women would probably go to court and people would still say, show me more, tell me more.
Yeah, and you know what, like I mean, originally this kind of podcast we started around domestic abuse, and those of you that know me know that I've got a whole knowledge of experience around domestic abuse. And one of the things that I really remember is going to court over quite a serious incident where he had attacked me and my daughter, and just getting completely like annihilated by the defense. And you know, to the point where I was just shaking, and they got me for everything. They were like almost to the point where they were mocking me just to try and get a response so they could find some kind of like area where they could belittle me. And it's just really sad, I think, where we really don't have enough compassion for the victims. And to bring it back again, it's like, you know, yes, we have to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, but we've also got to, you know, do that for the victims as well, because, you know, a lot of the time it's horrible when you're a victim of abuse. And like I said, having the courage to come out and speak about it, like it really should be commended. And if we're going to create a culture of shutting people down, like we need people to speak up if we're going to ever improve this, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's a really interesting point, Sola.
Can I just add one thing to that?
Yeah,
I think even though sometimes if someone makes an accusation and there's no, I suppose, representation of proof, you know, at hand, question is, what do you do about it? Do you act on it and say that, sorry, there's no evidence, therefore I can't take sides? Or do you actually say, kind of go on the side of caution and say, actually, there's a possibility that it's true and we need to take precautions? And I think it's just safer to take the precaution of, you know, pulling stuff off now. And if he's found to be innocent, fine, you know, he's vindicated. But you can't just let something go and then more abuse happening. I think that's just too high of a risk, you know.
Yeah.
And I think the cost, it's worth paying that cost.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well.
Can I jump in there? Sideman Dave made a great video today on Instagram, and he basically said, you know, you're weighing up a man's ego and money versus women's safety. And I'd recommend anybody go and watch that, because he made some really good points.
Was that on his Instagram, Louise?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a comedian as well as Sideman Dave.
He is, yeah.
Yeah, he's really funny. If anybody's watching, go check out his page. In fact, if any of these guys that are watching, please feel free to comment in the chat and we'll include your voices in this conversation. Love to hear what you guys think as well. Oh, so I mean, the reason why I brought you guys here is because you're all part of, you know, the creative industries, and one thing that I really wanted to kind of explore is what kind of things might happen in our industries that either you might have seen stuff or you haven't. But I mean, I'll start there. Have you guys seen anything in your industries, and if so, what? Like, tell me your views.
I've never heard of anything happening in the dance community, so I'm all eyes on Thomas.
Go on, Tom, go for it.
I've never heard anything about the dance community. Sounds squeaky clean.
Is it squeaky clean, Tom?
I wish it was, but it's obviously we're all human beings, you know, some good, some bad. So it's all there, really. It's a representation of society, isn't it? So, I mean, I'm in the world of partner dancing. So originally I was into hip hop and all of that stuff, but then I got too old. So I got into the more gentler side of dance, partner dancing, salsa, tango, and waltz and all that stuff. So I would say, from my experience, partner dancing is very much male led and traditionally male norms. And what I mean by that is the man, he's the one who asks the woman to dance traditionally. The man leads, the man has control. Most of the teachers are or used to be men. Yeah. So even if you're a woman, you were probably taught by a man. So you've got all of that methodology coming from men, where it's just about control. And even though women probably, I think women make up about 70% of the people who do partner dancing, from what I read. It's men who control it. So obviously there's an imbalance there. And obviously when you got more power, some people can abuse that power. So what have I seen? I wouldn't say I've seen anything explicit. I would just say men are kind of a bit aggressive when it comes to how they lead women, whether it's asking for consent or whether it's the way they dance with them, etc., just being really rough and dominant or domineering, shall I say. I would say that's one of the main traits, is that they're very kind of domineering. And as a leader, you've got to know the fine line between leading or guiding and actually just domineering someone and just like totally dominating them. I'd be interested in hearing what you feel about that.
Yeah, I think I mean, when I think of dances like the tango, it's a very passionate dance, isn't it? And it's led, and it's almost like, again, I think I said this in the last podcast, but where do you separate the art from all the other kind of stuff in between? Because if you start, and I said in the last one, when you take all the fuckeries out of it, it's kind of like, what are you actually left with? Because a lot of art comes from trauma in a way, doesn't it? It comes from hurt, it comes from exploitation. So, you know, in a weird way, that's what makes it beautiful. But there needs to be a conversation where we take the best bits of that and then bring it into the 21st century.
But on the subject of partner dancing, there's one more thing to add. With Latin dances especially, there's an assumption this is a romantic, even sexual dance. And that's the perception, that's how it's marketed. So, you know, they say, oh, join this sexy Latin dance of romance and love. And you push that out there and people come to classes expecting, I'm going to fall in love. Oh, that hunky romantic man over there or woman. You know, they have these ideas in their heads. And what they get is the average person from the pub sort of thing with the football t-shirts on and a pair of shorts. So not always up to expectations.
Yeah, I've said that about in one of the previous episodes around dating. It was around I think Valentine's Day we did an episode, and I was like, just you were on that way, weren't you, Louise? And I was saying that a lot of the men on these dating apps just look like Walking Dead applicants, or can't think what the name is. yeah, rejects from The Walking Dead. It's like, yeah, that's really an interesting point, Tom. Like,
but just to conclude that point, it's more about how, as artists, how do we want our art represented? Because however we describe it and label it and I don't know, portray it, that's what people are going to perceive it as, and they might act accordingly. So I think people who control the arts, I think they have a responsibility to say, actually, this is what it is. It's not that preconceived idea of what people may think it is.
Oof. Some really very, very interesting points. Ola, in the world of earring making and comedy and all the stuff that you do, have you seen anything like in your time?
You know, I haven't, but it's interesting because I'm just thinking, all right, for example, you know, like my Facebook posts, which are quite saucy sometimes, right?
Hilarious.
Sometimes I say saucy and they're not even, I don't think they're saucy, but sometimes the jokes are a bit cheeky. And I've found it's a really, really weird thing. And I don't know, Louise, what your comedy's like and how people respond with you being a woman and speaking about certain things. But I found that because I talk about certain things, it's left me open to the assumption that I'm the kind of woman who wants to see a dick pic or something quite inappropriate in my inbox. And when I have spoken to my male friends about it, some of them have said, well, it's what you put out though. I mean, you know, if you're going to crack a joke about, I don't know, something silly, but something that's a bit nudge, nudge, wink, wink, then you got to expect that to come into your inbox. And I'm like, well, actually, no, because I don't put that type of stuff in the inbox of men who can crack jokes, get away quite freely cracking jokes, no assumptions made about their morals or anything like that because of there's something about, I don't know, a butt crack or something like that. And I'm just like, hang on a minute. I mean, somebody else even said to me, well, you do come across as a bit of a goer because of some of the things you say. And that what that did was made me think, well, if I'm ever going to do anything that's comedy based, am I inviting unwanted attention? And is it my fault? And I had to really wrestle with that. And I thought, no, it bloody isn't, because I'm not sending like, you know, can I say a naughty word?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm not sending like mini pics to this person's inbox, that person's inbox, and saying, look at this, you know, because they've cracked a joke about something. I'm just like, but it's just so weird. So, I mean, I can't say I've experienced anything personally outside of that, but it's just a strange thing about what people expect you to be as a woman and the things you say. And if you say something, then you invite attention, and then it's your responsibility to fend that off because you said you cracked that joke. And it's just the oddest. And it has now made me think, if I do perform out there and crack certain jokes, what's going to happen and how do I then deal with that?
So what you're saying in a way is, in a way you're saying that you kind of have to police your behavior as a woman, whereas Tom's saying in his world, it's kind of expected that the male leads and has that more domineering role. Yeah, that's an interesting conversation. What about yourself, Louise? Like, in the world of comedy?
That's fascinating, Ola, what you just said, actually, because that's just dawned on me that I mean, I started comedy really late. I was like 47, something like that. So for 3.5 years, I gigged happily, no problems whatsoever, felt very safe, no issues. Yeah. And then it all started, and I was targeted by about 5 or 6 people, all males, all younger than me. And I tried to like get my head around what the change was. And just like you said, 2 things I can put it down to was that I because the way that all comedians network, unfortunately, is Facebook. That is the only way to network, and I so regret that that's the way that it is. But so I'd posted some stuff about I'd tried some online dating. It was like, must have been like some sort of because there was online dating. I'd made a few like jokes because I'd been getting like pretty crude stuff coming through these dating sites, and I was just like ridiculing it. So whether it was a case of like, oh God, she is a sexual being, even though she's 47. I don't know whether it was that. I don't know whether it was like, how dare you can't say that about men. I'm going to have a go at you. Or I'd also talked about a previous relationship where I had been emotionally abused. So whether they thought, oh, she's a bit of a soft touch, we can get away with it. But it was weird how it all started 3.5 years in, and it was like, boom, straight away. But
How
just
do you
like you
deal-
said,
how do you deal with that? What do you do?
well, this is actually quite interesting because nothing to start with, because like you, I was like, is it abuse? Is that, have I like caused that? Have I, who can I tell? Who's going to care if I say anything anyway? And then eventually I just sat with things. And at the moment I was just like, no, that's not, I'm not comfortable with that. That wasn't okay. And actually they might do that to somebody else. Then what I did was I wrote Facebook posts describing what had happened. One of them I did name because that was pretty serious and I wasn't the only woman involved. But I wrote, just to basically say, this is the sort of thing that is going on, just so that people could, other women could be more aware of the kind of things they might encounter.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. And in terms of, the people around you in the comedy world, so like the bookers, the venues, other comedians and colleagues, what was their kind of view on that? Were they supportive or?
Very mixed. I got a lot of promoters inboxing me saying, we won't book this person, or can you please share at least with us who this person is because we don't want to book him. So I did get support from quite a few promoters. But for a lot of people, it's just an inconvenient truth because they know the person, they have a laugh with the person, they're friends with the person, and they don't really want to have to deal with the difficult stuff. They just don't want to. So, a lot of it was just ignored.
Do you think that's part of the problem as well, that with the creative industries, we have more informal relationships with our colleagues and bosses, whereas in an office space or a traditional workplace, like I say, you probably wouldn't have the same kind of relationships.
Yeah.
It's going to be very interesting what happens post-COVID, because I know a lot of places are closing down, office spaces won't be there. How will the workplace look post-COVID will be quite interesting. I mean, what do you guys think of like false accusations and how people handle them? Like, do you feel, because I mean, I've seen that there are, clearly there's girls and boys out there, men and women, I should say, that do falsely accuse. And do you feel like there's enough follow-up on that? Like, do we get to hear the whole story, or how do we deal with the fakers out there that are kind of ruining it for everybody else?
I think, as I kind of mentioned earlier, it's a balance of what is the cost of doing something and not doing something. So say in the past, where most of the time, if there was a sexual assault or some kind of abuse, either you didn't go because you knew the police or the family, or there was no support system, and you wouldn't be believed anyway. So that happened for so many years, and that created a serious imbalance where people just don't come forward, because whether or not they will be believed, they have the perception that they're not going to be believed. And now it might actually be tipping the other way, where actually the accusation comes, it may be true, it may be false, and the balance of power might be towards the person making the accusation. But it's like discrimination. If it happens for so many years and there's so many assumptions based on what's happened, somehow you've got to balance that out. It might not be fair. I don't think there's a perfect solution to it, to be honest. Can you remain totally anonymous with all those accusations out there until the court case has been decided, which may take years? I don't know. Either way, it's not fair on either side, to be honest. I don't know. What does everyone else think?
I'm just thinking with technology, maybe that's where Big Brother will actually be useful, because everything will be recorded, it will be caught on camera, and we'll see the truth. I mean, do you guys remember, actually, speaking of Big Brother, when I can't remember what her name was. Was it Roxanne? She was that girl in. Do you know what I'm talking about? She was. I'm sure she was in Emmerdale, and the guy from Coronation Street. You remember Jason from Coronation Street? And she was like, he punched me, and then she went into the diary room, and she just must have forgotten that cameras are recording this like girl 24/7, and then she just literally made out that he really battered her or something, and then we were all there in dismay, going like, what is she talking about? And I mean, everybody was really shocked and horrified and gave her a really hard time. Like, do you feel like that kind of response is warranted for people that do lie about it? Because I'm thinking, surely there's got to be like a mental health problem if you go down that road. It's so hard, isn't it? It's really, really tricky to like what's the right thing to do. Yeah, crazy. There are so many talking points that I want to throw at you guys, so just jump in if you've got anything to say. But yeah, oh gosh, where do I even start with all this? Okay, so there's been some conversations from like the music side of things. So from speaking to people, I heard rumours around sort of like the Birmingham jazz scene in Birmingham being a little bit criticised in the past for not being inclusive to musicians. And there was almost like a culture where if you're not classically trained, you're not warranted as a jazz musician. And Ola, you and I were having a conversation around this, weren't we? And what was the point that you made around sort of jazz being a place of pain, and it's kind of ridiculous that anybody would have that viewpoint?
But I was just saying that it's just ironic where kind of jazz comes from, and the kind of roots of jazz, and sort of way back, predominantly black jazz musicians would have had to play in venues where they'd have to go through the back door to get it, you know, and it's just kind of how jazz has come about and how it's grown and how it was free form. I'm not a jazz expert, but I know it was fairly free form and very expressive, and quite sort of African American really in its origins, and that it's moved away from that and become this very highbrow, academic, exclusive club almost. And I saw on Facebook a conversation, I can't remember who posted this thing now, where this woman's boyfriend must have said to her, you know, come to this particular venue. And a lot of the musicians were very highbrow and exclusive, etc. And they had this conversation, and her boyfriend must have said, well, you know, you can only really be a jazz musician if you're academically trained. You know, if you've been through this process of learning things of the proper way. And I just thought, how ironic. It's just so far removed from where it first began.
Yeah.
And it just, I just don't get it. I mean, I get it, but I don't get it. It's just, yeah. So that's it.
Can I jump in there, Ola?
Yeah, for it, Tom.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I love jazz music, most styles of jazz, and I've been following it probably about 12 years or so.
Yes.
And I used to go to University of Birmingham and attend some of their circuit. That, you know, every conservatoire in the universities, they got the jazz section.
Yes.
And so they do their performances within their little student unions and bars and stuff like that. And it's very secluded, like you say.
Yeah.
And then I was teaching dance at BCU, and the same again, the conservatoire. Very, this is our thing. This is our thing. And then I'd go to some clubs, and again, you'd get the old school, older generation of jazz musicians who say, actually, this is our thing. And they don't support each other, even though they call it jazz. It's like, it's only jazz because we're doing this style of jazz, you know, bebop or And for me, even some jazz who call themselves jazz musicians are saying, "Oh, we're playing mainly white jazz from white musicians of a certain period," and I'm thinking, why even segregate it like that? But it's got so clinical now, where people are saying, "Oh no, this is a white jazz," or "This is black jazz," and it's a real shame, because Birmingham, as small as it is in the sense of the jazz world, it has amazing talents, you know, like Kosa and so many other saxophonists. It's incredible, but it's very segregated, I would say. Just to back up what you were saying, Ola.
Mm, yeah.
Fascinating. Sorry, go on, Ola. Were you going to say something?
Well, I know, you know, somebody who had a jazz club not so long ago, and it's not in existence anymore. Beautiful place. And I do remember having these kind of conversations with the owner, and she was like, you know, she wanted to bring in that balance, and you know, because it became very exclusive, and she wanted her venue to represent everything about jazz from its origins right up to now, you know, the whole story really. And I think I just wasn't really aware of the kind of division. I mean, I was, but I never really thought about it until I had these conversations with her, you know. And her venue was quite unique, but she really wanted to kind of cultivate that thing and kind of just get really rootsy and have that kind of free form, expressive jazz again. And I don't know what the scene is like now, if there's even one, but I know I don't really go to places where I hear it. And I don't know. What do you think, Thomas? I don't know.
Well, obviously we've
seen anymore.
well, I think it's actually since lockdown and everyone's had to do stuff online.
Yeah.
People have been forced to kind of collaborate, even if they probably don't want to. It's like, okay, if we want to perform, we have to do something together. And I think it's probably a bit more integrated. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, when it does, things open up again, people will start working together. And as far as abuse, it's the same thing. You know, it's about those who have power and don't want to share it, and those who want a bit of the limelight. And what compromises are you prepared to make? You know, what positions are you going to put yourself into, which may even be precarious, in order to just be part of something. And the people with power, what kind of people are they? Can you trust them? You know, are they going to exploit you? You know, I don't know that much about the music industry per se, but I do know, you know, people dream about it. It's a lifelong profession, I suppose. And you put so much trust in people who may be at the top of the certain profession, and you think, oh, these are the people I can 100% believe. And, you know, to find out later that they're exploiting you, whether financially or, you know, could be sexually or whatever, it's heartbreaking. You know, it breaks your dreams up sometimes, you know. And I've seen little elements of it. I wouldn't say I've seen it full scale, but you kind of, when you're at a venue, you see the power structure, who controls, what promoters are doing, why people aren't getting paid, and why some other artists are getting paid full whack, and some people are getting paid nothing, and they're of the same quality. It makes no sense.
Oh, Tom. That was like a whole nother podcast.
I know.
That's like so true. I mean, when we had a conversation the other night, like you brought up a really interesting concept that I hadn't actually thought, because obviously this podcast is titled Abuse Within the Arts, and then you said something really profound. What about abuse outside of the arts? And then you said, you know, for a lot of people, they're using the arts as escapism. They want to get away from either a bad home life or, you know, maybe other abuse that they're experiencing, and they use the arts to channel that energy and escape, essentially. And then it's just really sad that they get further victimized and exploited in the very industry that they've gone to help save them. And it's that really it got me thinking, Tom. I was like, whoa. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on that? It's really sad.
But just to kind of add to that, because I had to think about why I don't love dance that much anymore. And I think,
say that, Tom, you must always love dance. We love watching.
No, I do love it, but the passion isn't as much what it was before. And I'm thinking, well, I still enjoy it. It's just I had so much fire and passion for learning and being part of a community. And I think part of that passion came from escaping from an alcoholic, abusive family, or father figure. And I think I kind of rechanneled that energy into dancing. And I think, how much of that passion was actual passion, how much of it was just, right, I need an escape. Where do I hide, sort of thing. And luckily I had dance, and that kind of saved me almost.
That's really interesting as well. I mean, I don't know, have you guys informed about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences? If you're not, have a look at it, Google it. It's really, really interesting. The whole kind of concept is around people that have suffered certain traumas as young people often end up, having a lot of health problems as they get older. And that's because of turning to unhealthy coping mechanisms. So I just find the cycle very sad, really, that you'll go for some escapism, for something positive like the arts, and then, I mean, we've seen it in sports as well, haven't we, where coaches and stuff have exploited young people in their groups and stuff. Yeah, it's very, very sad. Oh gosh, there's so much. I mean, Louise, any kind of thoughts from you? Just sorry, I know we didn't get your opinion on some of those points.
No, all I was going to say was that I felt like there was a glimmer of hope when you were talking about jazz, because over the last sort of like 4 or 5 years, there's been this like real emergence of the South London jazz scene, with a lot of really young people with really raw talent, and they're just creating amazing stuff. Like Thomas said, collaborating as well. I'd be really interested to know if they are working within a new kind of framework, which doesn't perhaps, leave them open to abuse, whether they're kind of self-managing rather than reliant on other people, like Thomas was saying, people taking more than their fair share financially and things like that. It'd be interesting to know if it's, a more wholesome kind of culture coming through. That would be really positive. I mean, they're all like really sort of positive, great, amazing musicians. It'd be nice to think they're working in this nice new framework, really. Hope so.
It'll be interesting, Tom, when we spoke the other day, you said a lot about the, cancelling culture. And I know we tend to do that to the celebrities and stuff, but will we ever do that to the local kind of like predators that we see and maybe don't say much about? Interesting.
I do.
Like, I'm telling you all, man.
It's okay for us to talk about, Noel Clarke and what's it Weinstein, the Weinsteins and the Cosbys, but what about the uncle? What about your best mate's friend? You know what I mean? So that's the real challenge, isn't it? Yeah. That's the real challenge.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, there was one thought that I had, and I was just wondering what you guys think of it. So I was looking at the sort of Clarke story, and I was thinking the types of art that he makes is very sort of like it's from the. It's really gritty, you know what I mean? And in a way, all he's doing is bringing that culture, what he's seen and what he's probably lived, into a space on the big screen. And now it's like, oh, we have a problem with his behavior. But I'm not at all condoning what he's done, but I just find it interesting that culturally we are culture vultures in that sense as well, where we want to take all the bits that make us feel something and resonate with, whether it's painful or just the good parts of someone's culture. And like it kind of feeds into the whole conversation around cultural appropriation as well. Like, do you guys think that, I mean, my mind works in weird ways, but do you think that that's something that like needs to be a conversation? Do you feel like it is cultural appropriation in a weird way? I got you all wondering now. It's a deep one though, isn't it? Because it's like, I mean, when I say culture, I don't even mean a race per se. I just mean that these are the kinds of things that you see like in these areas. Like as you probably know, I'm from Handsworth. I've seen a hell of a lot of stuff, and the things that a lot of these programs talk about, like adulthood and kidulthood, you know, those things do happen. And it's like, you know, are we just taking all the bits that we want to see? And remember, this is coming from somebody with probably lived experience. That's why he's recreating that work on the silver screen. So in a weird way, it kind of made me think, is this kind of cultural appropriation in a way? I feel like we've lost Tom. Tom's like, hopefully he'll come back in a second. I just find it quite funny with Tom. He was getting darker and darker, wasn't he, in his background? Yeah, he's back now. See, every time I say Tom, he comes back. Yeah, I mean, do you feel like there's anything in that? Do you feel like it could be another element of cultural appropriation in his case, anyways?
Sorry, it's me being dense here. Can you explain who's doing the? I've just lost track of the thread there. Who's doing the appropriation? I just need to understand it a bit more.
Yes, it's kind of like, when I was thinking about it, I was thinking from a kind of, we as viewers take the art, which is the films, whether it's kidulthood, adulthood, and, you know, we indulge and feast on a program or a topic that makes us feel something, even if we're not from those kind of areas or backgrounds. But then it's like the person that's telling the story, who probably has lived experience, we then, you know what I mean? It's like, because I'm very interested with like how we profile victims and perpetrators, and a lot of the time it's not as, you know, black and white as that's a good person, that's a bad person. For all we know, this is just his, when I say culture, it's just the way he might have been brought up. Nobody's told him about this behavior as being inappropriate. And we know as you get further in the industry, you do sadly just become, you know, involved and surrounded by a lot of yes people. So if they're enabling the behavior, like, is it even his fault that he's not being like corrected on this? Again, I'm not condoning it. I just wanted to put a different, be devil's advocate.
I think God, again, this is just a whole other topic, isn't it? It comes back to what you said about, you know, where does the behavior come from in the first place? And maybe some of it has been background, sometimes it's mental health. It just depends, I guess, on his personal situation, but it's come from somewhere. Something in his life has led him to think that even if he doesn't think it's okay, he thinks he can get away with it. And if you read the actual Guardian article, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of like sneaky stuff, that's the stuff that I'm uncomfortable with. Like the emoji that was like the next day, you know, don't say anything about what happened. That kind of thing. That's, yeah.
Yeah. Ola, any kind of thoughts?
I don't know. I think power and exploitation is a really big one, because when you look at, say, I hate to mention this man's name, Jimmy Savile, you know, some people would argue that he's sociopathic and that's what led him to behave that way. And then maybe with Noel Clarke, I don't know what his story is, but then you've got, is it Harvey Weinstein? I don't know whether it would have been like love and money. I don't know whether it would have been just money and just a sense of just having so much money and being around, like, I guess Louise said about being around like yes people, and that kind of feeding into this monster. So I'm not quite sure. It's almost as though everyone's origins could be different, but there's something about power, or I don't know whether they find having power appealing. I'm not sure. It's very, very interesting, and it's very complex, isn't it? It's because surely there'd be other people who like Noel Clarke will create film and that, but they don't find it necessary to exploit people to get the best out of them. Or with somebody like Harvey Weinstein, they don't find it necessary to sleep with everyone to manipulate people to get the best out of them, yet they could still make a blooming decent film at the end of it. But oops, I've just spilt my birthday drink.
Oh no.
Birthday drink. But what is it about these individuals that kind of make them that way? I don't know. It's a fascinating subject, though. It's a fascinating question. What do you think?
The only reason I say that is because it kind of comes back from like you know, a friend of mine always says, hurt people, and it's almost like, where do you separate, I said this in the last episode, where do you separate the art from the actual person creating the art? And I feel like, again, we want to take the best of things, but then not go all the grit that comes with it, kind of thing. And it's like, well, again, how accountable are we for enabling it? Because we're all enablers in some way or another. Oh, I'm telling you, we'll need a part 10 to this conversation. So deep, it's crazy.
I wonder if, Jenna, I wonder if part of it, so from what I understand, what we're saying is when we watch like kidulthood, adulthood, and the grim things are happening, and we're like, oh, but then when a real person does it, it's like, no, that's really not okay. I wonder if it's actually because we can kind of distance ourselves because it's a character in the show. It could be that, like you say, it, you know, it appalls us, but we don't hate them because they're not a real person. Whereas, like, you know, when it's somebody that, you know, it's a real person, and we've kind of watched him grow over the last 20 years. We've seen his like rise. People have looked up to him. Personally, I was devastated because I always thought of him as this like amazing, lovely, doe-eyed character who had like really, you know, smashed the glass ceiling and really achieved things. And then to hear that, you know, it makes it even more unacceptable, I think, you know, because like Ola said, it comes back to power.
Yeah, and Tom mentioned this at the beginning where he said something about, what did you say, something about a role model? Tom, you said something about a role model, because
well, on Noel's Twitter feed, he says, "I am not a role model." And then he's got an emoji of a sheep.
That's the one, yeah.
So
and I remember,
yeah.
No, I remember Khalees, like back in the day. Do you remember Khalees? My milkshake brings all the boys to that. So I remember her like doing an interview and getting really kind of like moody, saying, "I'm not a role model." And it's really interesting, isn't it? Because influencers and artists, like, you got there for a reason, because people are following you. Like, you have to be a role model. I mean, that's another whole episode probably in itself. It's crazy. I mean, sorry guys, the time is flying by. We're 57 minutes in, so I'm probably gonna wrap up with my last question. There's too many questions to ask. So I want to know from you guys, having been around for a little while, what do you think's changed since you were younger, and do you think it's enough? Am I asking?
I'll try and give a quick answer. I think since I got into the dance arena in the 80s, it was a street dance, and therefore there was no regulation. And we didn't really have mentors. We had peers. Like, we were each other's peers, basically. So there's more equal power. Whereas now, the dance I do is more formalized. We have teachers, we have organizations, there are structures, and there are supposed to be safeguards in place where if there is any kind of abuse, you should be able to go to someone and say, actually, this is happening, do something about it. You know, you're funded to provide these objectives. Why aren't you doing it? I think that's what should be happening. Whether or not it actually is in practice, that's a different question altogether. But that's my take on it anyway.
Yeah, no, that's good, because somebody's actually asked that on. Sorry, guys, if anybody's commented on Facebook. I've been so bad today, not like bringing your comments up. But yeah, somebody's exactly asked that as well. What types of panels and organisations need to be set up to address this? Sorry, Louise and Ola, what were your thoughts on that?
Sorry, I'm just signalling to my son to get me some kitchen towel because I'm sitting in your birthday drink.
The birthday drink. Oh my God. I know mine's run out as well, guys.
I'm like,
so,
get me.
Anything
sorry.
changed? The question was, what do you think's changed since you were younger, and do you think it's enough?
I guess that more people are talking about abuse. I guess, I mean, I know we have like hashtag movements, so we've got Me Too, which has been incredible. Oh, thank you, my dear. Sorry. I'm kind of disappointed in a way though, because as much as people are talking about it and stuff, the same questions are still being asked, you know. Why did you dress like that? Why did you go there? Are you sure that happened to you? Yeah, but I haven't got enough proof though. So it's, yeah, I think we've gotten so far, but not far enough. So I think as an older woman, I probably feel more equipped to, if I experience abuse, to be able to go to the right places to get the help I need, and so on and so forth. Whereas I think perhaps my parents' generation, my mom wasn't a victim of abuse, but I'm just saying perhaps for her or her peers, there wouldn't have been that kind of, you know, place they could go, or person they could talk to, or thing that could be done. But it still annoys me that there's still victim blaming. So on one hand, things have changed a little bit and they've improved a little bit, but not enough. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
No, that's a really good point. I remember, like, I think it was last year now. Was it last year? It was last year, just before coronavirus, when the world was in somewhat of a normal place. Some guy tried to attack me in the park, and you remember that? Yeah, I wrote it on Facebook. He basically, I was with a friend in the park doing a jog, and he literally, I thought I had some dog muck on my shoe, so I stopped for a minute to wipe it. When I turned around, he was fully just exposing himself. And it was just so scary because he went to sort of lunge forward. I sort of stumbled back and he chased me out the park, and I've never run so hard in my life. But it was interesting, like, how people responded afterwards, going, the first things that they asked, what were you doing in the park on your own? And it was like, I wasn't even on my own, I was with somebody. What were you doing at that time? It was the afternoon. Like, so why is it me that, like, had to be sort of questioned for what I was doing and why, and almost like it's my fault? And it was like, nothing was like, oh, there's some sick people out there. I mean, that would have been nice if it was the first response. But I agree with you, Ola. I feel like there is still a sense of, like, victim blaming, and it's almost like we can't accept that some people can be bad, so we want to find out, oh, you must have done something to provoke it. Like, actually, no, some people are just crazy. Louise, any kind of any thoughts from yourself? Like, has anything changed since you was a wee ute?
Well, a couple of things there. First of all, what you just said there about some people just aren't prepared to, you know, consider that there are bad people out there. I think you've got to look at their upbringing and how gaslit have they been to have that view of the world. And I say that because that was me. That was me up until way into adulthood, you know. But from my perspective, I think education has got to start playing a part. You know, the sort of rate at which things have come into the media over the past 12 months, you've got to start looking at misogyny. That's got to be tackled in schools, families as well. But unfortunately, as we know, not all families are actually equipped to do that. So education has got to start playing a part. But the good news is that, as far as I'm aware, there's never been any regulation whatsoever in comedy. And it's laid people open to all sorts of horrible kinds of abuse. I mean, one thing that we're different with, I guess, is that car sharing to gigs is a really common thing and was encouraged before COVID. You know, so people won't think twice about just getting in a car with a stranger and going 100 odd miles. And there's been horrific stories about things that have happened to women on the way back from the gig. So because all of these things have now started to come to light, there is actually now an organisation that's been put in place, and now is probably a good time to mention that. Yeah. So people who are comedy fans of TV, you probably will have heard of Kiri Pritchard McLean. She's on a lot of the panel shows, game shows, things like that. She's teamed up with a comedian called Nina Gilligan, and together they've created a CIC, and it's called Get Off Comedy. And the idea is, although victims can go for support, can contact them, it's designed to be this like independent HR organisation. but also they want to set up a kite mark system so that promoters and clubs, or if you run a night, you kind of join the organisation, you donate a percentage of your ticket takings, and if you participate in the training that they give you in terms of keeping women safe at your nights, and if you agree to abide by the policies, they will give you a kite mark, which I think is brilliant. It's taken a really proactive, positive move to hopefully, I mean, their aim is to eradicate sexual harassment in comedy, which is fantastic. But if people do this and they only stick to the kite mark clubs, it's possible.
That's amazing. I've got it scrolling across. Get Off Comedy. Please do. Hopefully they have a hashtag. Or you can get in touch. You can ask us at askhips@mail.com if you want any more information.
Yeah.
I'd love to speak to you guys all day. There's so much to talk about. Any kind of final thoughts that you guys want to put forward? What do you think should be done in the future? Or any kind of final thoughts to wrap up?
I would say just on an individual level, it's our individual responsibilities to kind of call people out, even if it's having those uncomfortable conversations with friends or family, and rather than thinking, oh, I'm going to upset the apple cart or the status quo, we're the ones we've got to take the risk and be courageous enough to call them out and hold them accountable, essentially. Because fair enough, you can have government policy, but if no one's going to call it out, then there's no point having policies and laws. Someone's got to be courageous enough to say that's wrong. Hold people accountable, basically.
Oh, that's such a good point, Tom. I want to talk to you guys all night. Guys, what can I say? It's been so lovely having you all in the same room. I love you guys all individually, and just to have this conversation on my birthday. It probably sounds like a sad thing to do for other people, but it's like I'm in my element right now. I love these conversations. I really definitely echo what Tom said, where we need more of these conversations. We need people to be brave and courageous, speak up, and don't let this behavior persist. If you feel like you've done, had something wrong done to you, talk to somebody. Like, there's counselors out there. I've run a few support lines at the bottom, but there's things like Samaritans. There's Safe Line, there's Refuge, there's Mind, which is a mental health support. Even with ourselves, if you're a young person, we're actually doing some more stuff in Dudley now where you can get free mental health support. If there's anything that you want to know about what any of us are doing, please email us at askhips@mail.com. For those of you that have been watching tonight, really big thank you. For those of you that catch up in future and watch with us, I hope you enjoy these conversations. If there's anything that you want us to talk about, please get involved. We also have a Facebook group as well called the Hips Network, which is scrolling along the bottom. So that's on Facebook. It's a private group, but essentially what we want to do with this is kind of get people networking and connecting people. That was a great noise from Tom.
I'm on the street, so it's like you got these expensive cars driving all over the place.
I loved earlier, by the way, when you were talking about the police and like the police sirens started going off at the same time. That was like brilliant. No, honestly, you guys have all come with some amazing points. I'm gonna go to bed tonight really thinking about them all. But yeah, just massive thank you, guys. And yeah, like I say, we'll catch you at the next episode. And I hope you've enjoyed this evening's conversations. So yeah, lots of love to you all. Have a safe May, and I'll see you all soon. See you later, guys.
Thank you. Bye all. Bye, Ola. Bye.
See you, Jenna. Ola. Louise.
See you, Thomas.